We're on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, page 12a, and we're going to try to finish this piece of Gemara, which we started yesterday. And we spoke about how when a person recites a bracha, they're supposed to know what the bracha that they are reciting is about. And they're supposed to have the right intention, what they're saying, what they're thanking Hashem for. And the Gemara's question is, what happens if a person didn't? If a person had the wrong intent and then switches it and corrects it in the end, can you fix it up? Or is it too late once you say Hashem's name? Is it too late? And this is what the Gemara was talking about. And it mentioned a few different cases. One case was where a person is holding a cup of wine and he thought it was beer. So he says Hashem's name, thinking that he's reciting a bracha, shahakol nihiya b'dvaroi, and really he's supposed to be saying a bracha, bayre pri agafen. But when he said Hashem's name, he's thinking that it's beer, and then afterwards he realizes what it is, so he corrects it in the end. And then the Gemara said, what about the opposite case? And then the Gemara talked about a case of Yotzer Or Uvayre Choshech in the davening, where he started saying Hashem's name, thinking that he's going to say the evening bracha, and he said the morning bracha in the end, corrected it. Or if he did the opposite, he said the morning bracha, and in the end, he started thinking that he's going to say the morning bracha, and in the end, he said the evening bracha. And so the Gemara went through these different cases. I'm going to start the Gemara one more time from the beginning, and hopefully we'll finish it. Hopefully we'll finish it today. So we're on page 12a. We're going to start at the two dots halfway down the page. Shita. It is obvious. If a person held a cup of wine, biyadeh in his hand, when he thought it's beer, and he started saying the bracha, thinking that it's beer. So he's thinking that he's going to be reciting a bracha shahakol. That would be the ending. That's what he's thinking when he said Hashem's name. And he ended the bracha reciting the correct bracha of wine, bayre pri hagafen. So he ended it right. The problem is he started the bracha wrong, thinking the wrong thing. The Gemara says that case is yotza, he's fulfilled the mitzvah, and it said pshita, that is obvious. It is obvious that he fulfills the mitzvah here. Why is it obvious? Maybe someone could tell us if they remember from yesterday. Why would it be obvious if you have in mind the wrong thing? You had in mind shahakol, but you ended it off right. You ended it off with the bracha for wine, bayre pri hagafen. That for sure you fulfilled the mitzvah. What do you mean? You said that you had in mind the wrong thing when you said the Hashem's name. Anyone, Miranda?
Yeah, the shechakol blessing, because the meaning of it covers a lot of things, things other than just like specific wine or specific other things. I don't know.
Right. The bracha shahakol is an all-encompassing bracha. Even though we are not supposed to use the shahakol for certain things, because we're really supposed to recite a more detailed thanks to Hashem. We're supposed to say a more detailed thanks to Hashem for creating the fruit of the vine, the fruit of the tree, the fruit of the ground, the vegetables, and so on. We're supposed to be more specific in our brachas, but the bracha of shahakol is an all-encompassing bracha. And therefore, if a person had in mind to recite a shahakol, theoretically, if he finished the bracha with shahakol, he would have fulfilled the mitzvah. So here, what did he do? He then corrected it and ended off saying a more specific bracha about the wine. So what's wrong? Even if he ended it with the wrong thing, shahakol, he still would have fulfilled the mitzvah. He still would have been yotzeh. He would have fulfilled the obligation of reciting the bracha. So now that he corrected it got to be better than finishing off wrong. And finishing off wrong was fulfillment of the bracha. So finishing it off right is for sure fulfillment of the bracha, right? He did nothing wrong, so he really is okay. He's yotze. He has fulfilled the obligation of reciting a bracha. The inami, because even if also in Amar Shahakol Niya B'dvaro, if he ended it off with the Shahakol bracha, and he finished with that wrong thought, and he said the Shahakol Yatza, he would have fulfilled the obligation of reciting a bracha, the Hatanan, because we learned in a Mishnah later on, Al Kulam, on all foods. Im Amar Shahakol Niya B'dvaro, if a person recited the bracha Shahakol Yatza, he has fulfilled his obligation. But the Gemara says, here is the question. Here is the $1 million question. If a person's holding a cup of beer, biyodei in his hand, because Savar, and he thought the chamrahu, that it's wine. He's thinking that it's wine. So he's going to recite Hashem's name in the bracha, thinking that it's wine. Thinking that he's going to end the bracha bar priyagofet. And then he realized that it's beer. And he started saying the bracha, having in mind wine. But he ended it off correctly. He ended it off with beer. Now, what would have happened if he ended it off with wine? It's really beer. And what would happen if he recited the entire bracha wine? He would not fulfill his obligation of a bracha. He would need to recite a new bracha, shahakma. But here, he didn't finish it off with the wine. He started it thinking that it's wine, but he finished it correctly. He finished it with shahakma. But when he said Hashem's name, Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, he's thinking that it's wine. So he's thinking the wrong thing, having in mind the wrong bracha. So what is the halacha? What is the law? Basar ikar bracha azlinon. Do we go after the main bracha, the main part of the bracha, Hashem's name? Oy basar chasima azlinon. Or do we go after the end of the bracha, how he ended it? What do we go by? Tashema, come and listen. Tashema always means the Gemara is going to try to bring a proof. And that's what the Gemara often does. It'll try to bring from one source, see if this can prove it, maybe bring from another source, try to somehow see from other writings that we have to see if we can give an answer to this question. And it's all about clarifying the halacha. We're trying to clarify the Torah, reveal what the real meaning of Torah is. And the Torah is often very hidden. It's hard to come out with a conclusive answer. We have to, that's what our job is really by studying Gemara, is we're trying to come out with clarity and reveal these hidden gems that are hidden. And so now we're trying to figure out what is the main part of the bracha and at what point do you need to repeat the bracha or not. And so Tashema, come and listen. The Gemara now gives the case. Shachris in the morning, Pasach beYotzer, he started reciting the correct bracha, Yotzer, after Yishtabach, before the Shema. He says a bracha, Yotzer, blessing of Shema. It's the first blessing of the Shema. But he started it off right. V'siyem b'ma'ariv aravim, he ended it off with the evening bracha of the Shema. So when he said Hashem's name, he had in mind the right thing. But when he ended it with the wrong bracha. He recited the wrong bracha, Ma'ariv Aravim. Lo yatza, he has not fulfilled his obligation. He's going to have to start all over again. Baruch ato Hashem. He has to say Hashem's name. He has to say from the beginning of the bracha again, because he ended it off wrong, and that ruined his bracha. Lo yatza, he did not fulfill his obligation. Pasach b'Ma'ariv Aravim. What happened in the morning, in the daytime? He started saying the Ma'ariv Aravim blessing, which is the evening blessing, V'siyem b'Yotzer, and he ended it off with the morning bracha. He ended off right. So he said the right things, but when he said Hashem's name, he had in mind the evening bracha. Here it says he's Yotzer. He fulfilled his obligation. What does that sound like? Does it make a difference if you have the wrong intent when you say Hashem's name? Or is the main thing, what is the main thing? Is it the end or the beginning? What do we see from these 2 points here? It looks from here that it doesn't matter what you have in mind when you say Hashem's name. It looks like the main thing is the way you end the bracha. That's what it says. That's what it seems like. And let's continue and see if that flows. Arvis, what happens in the evening? Pasach b'mayre v'aravim. You started it off saying Hashem's name right. Mayre v'aravim. V'siyem b'yotzer or. And you ended off with reciting Yotzer or, the bracha for the morning. Lo yotze, you didn't fulfill the obligation. Even though you said Hashem's name right, but you ended it wrong. Pasach b'yotzer or. If you started saying Yotzer or, which is wrong, having in mind Hashem's name for the wrong bracha. V'siyem b'mayre v'aravim, but you ended it correctly. You ended it with the night bracha. Yotze, here you did fulfill your obligation. So what it sounds like from all this, in the Mishnah itself, this is a brisa, or this it sounds like from this statement, it actually summarizes it itself. It says, Klolei shel davar, the general rule is, Hakol hoylech achar hachitum. Everything goes after the chitum. Everything goes after the ending. So that seems to be what the answer is. It sounds like we've answered our question. What happens if you start off saying a bracha, Bayrei Pri Hagafen, and then you realize it's beer, and you finish it correctly? Should that be good? What do you think? What does it sound like from here? Have you fulfilled your obligation? Anyone?
Yes, I say that it's yes.
You fulfilled your obligation. Why?
Because you corrected it at the end.
You said the right bracha in the end. You corrected it. Thank you. You said it right at the end. You said Hashem's name wrong, having in mind the wrong thing, but doesn't matter. You corrected it at the end. It's considered as if you said a good bracha. So the Gemara says, you know what? We can't prove it from here. There's a reason why we could say this doesn't really prove it. We could find some reason why this bracha, this case, is really different than the case we're asking. Shani Hassam, there is different, maybe. In other words, when the Gemara answers, often it doesn't mean to say definitely it's different. It could be that your answer is a correct answer, but we're proving wrong the proof. The proof is not a good proof, because that case might be different. Why might it be different? Because there is different to Ka'amar, because over there you say, Baruch Yotzer HaMa'oros, you end off with the bracha at the end of the bracha. So you really are not relying on the beginning part of the bracha, which you said wrong. In the case of the blessing of Shema, which is the source of what we're trying to give an answer from there, that case is really different than a case where you say a bracha on fruit, on wine, on beer. It's different, because when you say a bracha on wine or beer, you're only saying Hashem's name once. So the main bracha maybe is done wrong. You might have to repeat it. The case where we brought a proof from, that case is where you repeat a bracha at the end. So you're really correcting what you messed up in the beginning, and there you fulfilled your obligation. So you can't really prove it from there. So the Gemara says, Shani Hassam there is different. We're now on the first wide line in the Gemara. There is different to Ka'amar, because he says, Baruch Yotzer HaMa'oros, he ends with the bracha. Baruch Ato Hashem Yotzer HaMa'oros, he ends with the blessing. So when he corrects it at the end, he's corrected it. And therefore it works. Now the Gemara says, but that's only true if a bracha means Baruch Ato Hashem. But it could be a bracha means Baruch Ato Hashem Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. Could be you need to say Melech HaOlam for it to really be a bracha. So if you really need it to be Melech HaOlam, you need to say the King of the universe to make it a bracha. Then in this case where you ended off Baruch Ato Hashem Yotzer HaMa'oros, you didn't say Melech HaOlam. And since you didn't say Melech HaOlam, the end part is not really a bracha. And therefore, you say you have a good proof. Because just like over there, you fulfilled the mitzvah of saying the bracha, even though in the beginning part you said Hashem's name having in mind the wrong thing, but you ended it right, and there's no extra bracha at the end, because all you say is Baruch Ato Hashem. That's not real bracha. That's just Baruch Ato Hashem. So it's just like saying a bracha on beer or on wine, because even though you said Baruch Ato Hashem at the end, but you didn't say Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. And Melech HaOlam is a major part. This is an argument between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. Let's read it inside. Hanicha, this goes good. What you just disproved, the proof, this disproving goes good according to Rav. That goes good according to Rav. That says the Amar Kol Bracha, any bracha she'ein ba hazkaras Hashem, that doesn't say you don't have a mention of Hashem's name. That's not a bracha, ain't a bracha. But as long as you say Hashem's name, it is a bracha. Even though you don't say Melech HaOlam, it's the bracha. And therefore, according to this, according to Rav, you've disproved my proof. But the Gemara says, Shaper, this is good. But Ella Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Amar that says, called bracha shein ba malchus, if you don't say Melech HaOlam, that Hashem is king over the universe, that's not a bracha. So here, when you conclude the Shema blessings, you don't say Melech HaOlam, and therefore it's not a real bracha at the end. And therefore, if you had in mind when you started the bracha, you had in mind the wrong thing. You said Hashem's name and having in mind the wrong ending. Even though you ended it right, or as long as you ended it right, I should say, as long as you ended it right, it's kosher. It's a good bracha. That will prove our case as well. You started saying a bracha thinking that it's wine, and then you realize it's beer. You ended off shahakol niyabed baray. This is a good proof that bracha is also good. So the Gemara says, according to one opinion, now we do have a proof. You tried to disprove our proof. It's not true. According to one opinion, according to Rabbi Yochanan, and that's I believe that's the halacha even, that bracha needs to have Shem Malchus. It has to have Hashem's kingship. So therefore, it's a good proof that if you end it right, you've done. You're okay. So even though we tried to disprove it, that was only according to one opinion. That was according to Rav. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, it is a good proof. So the Gemara says, no, but we have another exception here. There's another reason why this bracha is different. You know why this bracha is different? Ella, the Gemara says, rather, this bracha is different because something we mentioned earlier in the Gemara, and that is that the Shema blessings, we don't just talk about the daytime, in the morning. We don't just say, thank you, Hashem, for bringing light. And in the evening, thank you, Hashem, for bringing darkness. What do we say? We say both. We say in the morning, we talk about darkness also. Yotzer Or forms light. Uboirei Choshech, he creates darkness. What about in the evening? Goylel Or b'pnei Choshech. Hashem takes the light and brings darkness. We mention both in the morning and in the evening because we're trying to emphasize that Hashem is the one who created light and created darkness. And it's not that there's two separate gods, chas v'shalom. It is one Eibishter who made both. And therefore, for these brachas, we actually recite the evening in the daytime. We talk about the daytime in the evening. So when you say this bracha and you have in mind the wrong thing, in truth, you're really having in mind the right thing. Because this bracha is a good bracha. It talks about the day during the day. Even though it's a night bracha, it talks about the day. And even though it's an evening bracha, even though it's a day bracha, it talks about the night. So really the bracha is not a wrong bracha. Is it exactly how the rabbis established the evening bracha? No, it's not exactly the way the rabbis established. You should really say the morning bracha in the morning and the evening bracha in the evening. But the morning bracha is not wrong in the evening, and the evening bracha is not wrong in the morning. And therefore, you fulfilled the mitzvah as long as you end it right. So the fact that you said Hashem's name and had in mind the wrong time, the wrong bracha, it's not really wrong. So that's why you fulfilled the obligation. Kivan the Amar Rabba Bar Ula, we're on the third wide line. That you're supposed to mention Hashem's trait of day and night, in both day and night. So the night, the midah of Yom, we mentioned about daytime, Laila at night. Umidas Laila, we mentioned about the quality of the element of night. We mentioned by Yom during the day. So kikama bracha umalchus meikara, when a person recites the bracha in the beginning and he has in mind the wrong thing, atarvayu ka'amar, it's not really wrong. He's having in mind both day and night. So therefore, it's not really wrong. And as long as he ends it right, he's got it all set. You started it right, you ended it right, you're all set. So you don't have a proof. So now we need a third proof. Tashema miseifa. Let's try to bring a proof from the end. Klolei shel davar, the general rule of this matter is everything goes after the end. Now that sounds like a great proof, because here it summarizes the whole laws and it says, let me just tell you a general rule. You know what the rules of brachas are? Everything goes by the end. What is this point of summarizing it all? What does that seem to be bringing out? What point is that bringing out? What is it adding to our knowledge? Lav la suye hadamarin. Isn't it coming to tell you our case? That our case, where you end it correctly, you started off saying a bracha on wine, and then you realize it's beer, and you corrected it afterwards. Goes after the ending. You're yotze, you fulfilled your obligation of reciting a bracha. Sounds like a good proof. So the Gemara says, no, that's not what it is coming to tell us. Loi la suye nahamo v'tamri. And now the Gemara says it's coming to talk about an after bracha, and the after bracha of bread and dates. That's what it's coming to teach us. That the after bracha of bread and dates, if you had the wrong thing in mind, it goes by the ending. Hey chidam, what is the case of bread and dates? Now keep in mind that dates are one of the 7 species. And when you eat 2 or 3 dates, you need to recite an after bracha. And the after bracha of dates is al ha'etz v'al pri ha'etz. It's a paragraph long bracha. When you recite the after bracha on bread, it's a few pages. It's the Hazanas HaKoil, the Hazanas HaOlam Kula B'Tuvay, and then Hazanas HaKoil, and then the second bracha Al Aretz V'Al HaMazayin, and the third bracha U'Bnei B'nei Barach M'Yushalayim Amein, and then the fourth bracha Teva Metiv, and then you have the Harachamans, and then the grace after meals. So that is the blessing, the after bracha for bread. Now, the Gemara says that this is going to be a case where we're going to say that if you make a mistake in your after bracha, as long as the ending is good, you've done okay. What is that case? Hechidam. How is this? What are we talking about? How is this so? Ilema, if you will say, the achal nahama, you ate bread, because savra de tamri achal, and you thought that you ate dates. Now, don't ask me how a person couldn't figure out what they were eating. But maybe because of COVID, nowadays, COVID, maybe we can relate to it a little because some people lose their taste and smell. Or possibly if they were eating Lara bars and they're used to and they're very healthy. So it could be that even in the bread, their wife puts some dates because it's healthy. So it's hard to figure out, is it a Lara bar or is it bread? But whatever it is, or they lost their taste somehow, I don't know how it's possible. You'll have to come up with your own example. But the case is that the person ate bread and he thought he ate dates. Upasach adaita de tamri. And so he started reciting the after bracha of al ha'etz ve'al pri ha'etz, the one paragraph after bracha, and thinking that it's dates. He's having in mind that after blessing. Then he realized, no, that was bread, or his wife screams out, it's bread. Somehow he realizes it was bread. Somehow he figured out it's bread, and he ended it off correctly. So the Gemara says, Hainu bayon. That would be our question. That would be similar to our case. And then you would be able to prove that if you ended it off correctly there, our case would also be you ended it off correctly with the beer and the wine. You ended it off correctly, then you would have a proof. But the Gemara says that would be a proof to our case. But we're trying to disprove it. So let's say the case is the opposite. Lo tzricha, it's not needed, rather for the opposite case. Going to achal tamri, you ate dates because savra nahama achal, and you thought you ate bread. So here you ate dates, but you thought you ate bread. So you're starting to recite an after bracha of Hazan Ha'olam and Hazanas HaKoil. You're going to say that after bracha, the grace after meals, because you think you ate bread. So you started saying the bracha, thinking that you're gonna recite the bracha of the grace after meal. But you ended it off correctly. You ended it off right because you ended it off with dates, and you are yotze. It says you fulfilled the mitzvah because it goes after the ending. You ended it off correctly. Why is this case so unique? Why is this better? What is so good about this case? Because there's something very special about dates, and I don't know if any of you know this. And if someone wants to make a lot of money, you could sell this to the Larabar company. They might actually write it as their advertising line, and you could possibly get some credit for it. So the Gemara says that something's very unique about dates. Even if you ended off the bracha of Hazanas HaKoil, imagine if you benched grace after meals on dates, you fulfilled your obligation. You have done a good bracha. It's okay. You've done a good bracha. Even though you accept grace after meals on dates, how can you say such a thing? It's supposed to be for bread. The Gemara says that by time, what's the reason? The Tamri Nami Mezan Zaini. Dates are considered just like bread, that they give satisfaction and they give a certain Mezan Zaini. What would the translation? Mezan Zaini. They satisfy your hunger. They fill your hunger.
Steinsaltz says sustenance, gives you sustenance.
They give you sustenance, similar to bread, that it has a certain element to it. Dates have a certain something unique that it gives you sustenance. And because of that, it is considered you fulfilled your obligation, even though you had in mind the wrong thing, but you ended it off right. But it doesn't prove anything to our case, because our case, you were going to end it off you were going to say it initially with the wrong bracha. Here, if you initially had in mind the wrong bracha, but that bracha is also good. It's not totally wrong. It's okay because dates give sustenance. So that bracha you had in mind, it's not totally wrong. So the Mishnah says, that case, you're yaitze. So the question is, so what do we do? What about in our case? You started off saying a bracha. So we've now concluded the Gemara, and I must say this was one of the hardest Gemaras here. We've just finished it, so now you can rest. You can be more relaxed. We've gotten through it. We've covered it. But the question is, what do you do if you miss out if you said you had in mind the wrong thing, and then you corrected it afterwards? You had in mind to make a bracha bari pri hagofen, and then you realized it's beer, and you say, what do you do? So there's an argument in this Tosfos over here on the side, because on the one hand, it's only rabbinic. And there's a rule that anything rabbinic, we are lenient. We assume you fulfilled your obligation. Don't go recite a new bracha. For rabbinic law, if we're not sure if your bracha was good enough, was valid, we assume it is. Because something that's rabbinic, we are lenient. So here the Gemara doesn't give us a clarity in the end. It says we don't have any proof what to do. We can't prove what the law would be. So one opinion in Tosfos is that you're lenient and you don't have to recite another bracha. The other opinion says, no. It's not so simple. Blessings are rabbinic, but stealing is not rabbinic. Stealing is a biblical law. You're not allowed to steal. And if you eat something without saying a bracha, you're actually stealing. That's what it says in the 6th chapter here, that if you take a food without reciting a bracha, you're stealing from Hashem. And so because it's a biblical law, not saying a bracha it would be stealing. So therefore you're obligated to recite another bracha. So here you have that argument in this Tosfos. There's another interesting thing that Tosfos brings up. That's a very interesting question. Tosfos is of the opinion that you don't have to have in mind the right intention when you do a mitzvah. There's an argument in the Gemara if you need to have the right intention. Mitzvahs tzrichas kavana. The mitzvahs need kavana. There's an argument about that in the Gemara. Do you have to have in mind, or is it good enough if you did the mitzvah even though you didn't have the right intention? And the reason is because you did the right thing. Okay, you didn't have the right thing in mind. Who cares? You gave charity. The guy benefited. The guy had food now to eat. You did the mitzvah. Who cares? You didn't have the right intention. Anyway, it's an argument in the Gemara if mitzvahs need kavana or don't need kavana. Tosfos asks a good question. He says, Tosfos says he holds that mitzvahs don't need kavana. Some say he only holds this by rabbinic laws, but it could be that he holds it even biblical laws. Whatever it is, Tosfos holds that mitzvahs don't need intent. So let's take this case. You said a bracha on beer, and you might have said the wrong, you might have had in mind the wrong thing, but you said it right. You said the bracha for beer. You said shehakol niyeh b'dvaroi. So mitzvahs don't need, this is a mitzvah to say a bracha. You had the wrong intent. Who cares? Tosfos says, I hold that mitzvahs don't need kavana. So what's the Gemara talking about? Make a big deal out of this. You don't need kavana. It's good. Right? It's a good question. He says, mitzvahs you don't need the right intent. So I said a blessing on the beer. I had the wrong thing in mind, but that doesn't matter. We know by mitzvahs, you don't need intent. You walk by a shul and you hear, according to Tosfos, if you walk by a shul and you hear them, if you're fulfilling a mitzvah, you hear them doing a certain mitzvah, and you even though you didn't have in mind to be yaitza, but you heard it, you did it, you yaitza. You heard them reading the Torah or something. You're yaitza. So the question is, why here? Is it a big deal? You need kavana. So Tosfos has Tosfos gives us a very important answer, and he says here the problem is if you have nothing in mind, it's no problem. What happens if you have the opposite intent? Here you had in mind to say the wrong bracha. You have in mind to say the wrong bracha. Now you need to have the right intent. Normally, it's no problem. You have no intent. You didn't ruin the bracha. You said the bracha right, and you didn't have the right intention. But what happens if you said that you had in mind the wrong intention? You ruined the bracha. Anyway, that concludes our class. Sorry for going a few minutes late. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tonight in Mitzvah Hashem, or tomorrow. Sei gesund.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Rabbi, thank you.